Outside of Time Episode 8. In the previous episode, Xu Qing was forced into a dense and disorienting labyrinth fog, a danger known for making travelers lose all sense of direction. With Captain Lei's life hanging by a thread, Xu Qing had no choice but to push forward. Just when escape seemed impossible, the strange shadow beneath him devoured part of the fog and granted him an uncanny perception that allowed him to see through the haze. Using this newfound ability, he navigated the mist like a ghost and came across two desperate scavengers wandering in circles. Although he initially intended to leave, their cries for help and the white pills they offered made him reconsider. Xu Qing guided them through the fog, but when one of them tried to deceive him, the candlelight went out, plunging everything back into darkness. One scavenger was left behind in mounting despair, while the other, who repaid Xu Qing swiftly, earned a chance to escape by following the quiet rhythm of his footsteps. At the end of the previous episode, Xu Qing vanished deeper into the fog, leaving behind a man's frantic cries fading into hopelessness. What will happen next? Stay tuned. And the story continues. Xu Qing didn't pay attention to the person following him. As Xu Qing walked with Captain Lei on his back, he took out the white pills from the leather bag and fed them to the latter. The white pills, along with the efficacy of the 7-leaf grass, slowly eased Captain Lei's condition. His once greenish-black complexion began to fade, although the dense anomalous substances in his body were still not fully suppressed. Despite this, he remained unconscious, clearly affected by the extreme ordeal he had endured in the Forbidden Zone. As they moved through the dark night, Xu Qing encountered more scavengers trapped in the labyrinth fog. He allowed them to follow him, exchanging the precious white pills for their cooperation. Guided by the sound of Xu Qing's footsteps, these desperate individuals were able to make their way forward. Among them, a few were effectively blind, unable to perceive the labyrinth clearly. Yet even they became guides for the others, inadvertently helping and deepening the group's respect for Xu Qing. Many began to speculate that Xu Qing possessed innate mental energy of a rare kind. Someone naturally resistant to the confining fog. Xu Qing recalled what Luan Tooth had told him about such individuals and realized that this assumption could conveniently conceal the truth of his abilities. With this understanding, he continued on, unconcerned about revealing his secret. As Xu Qing used more white pills to sustain Captain Lei, eventually accumulating more than 10, the latter's complexion improved further. The greenish-black tinge faded to a pale green, and his breathing became more even. Meanwhile, Xu Qing noticed that his ability to perceive the fog through his shadow was not indefinite. The clarity of the labyrinth ahead began to waver, growing hazy as he moved forward. Realizing his advantage was temporary, he quickened his pace. By the time the first rays of morning sunlight began to pierce through the dense canopy, Xu Qing leapt toward the boundary of the jungle with Captain Lei on his back. As he stepped beyond the dark foliage, the warmth of the sun and the fresh breeze enveloped him, and he inhaled deeply, savoring the sensation of freedom. Behind him, the scavengers gradually regained their sight as they approached the edge. One by one, they emerged into the sunlight, their previous despair replaced by vitality. An old man knelt, gently pressing his lips to the earth in gratitude, as the survivors took in the sight of Xu Qing and Captain Lei. Memories of the boy's courage and resourcefulness resurfaced. Some whispered his name in awe, others called out for Captain Lei. Yet, Xu Qing's stern gaze silenced them instantly. His previous demonstrations of cold decisiveness had left a lasting impression. No longer concerned with the scavengers, Xu Qing turned toward the path to the campsite. At that moment, two figures, Cross and Luan Tooth, appeared, rushing anxiously toward him. They had feared the worst, ready to re-enter the Forbidden Zone if Captain Lei had not returned. Cross's eyes narrowed briefly upon seeing Captain Lei on Xu Qing's back, but softened as they met Xu Qing's determined expression. Luan Tooth's initial murderous intent flared at the sight of the followers but was immediately calmed by Xu Qing's words. He credited the followers with saving Captain Lei, explaining their vital role, which brought relief and gratitude to those around him. With a gesture of respect, the scavengers departed. Cross moved forward to help relieve Xu Qing of his burden. but Xu Qing insisted on continuing a little longer. Eventually, the group arrived at the camp, heading straight to the doctor who had gained local renown. Observing the somber expressions of the Thunder team, others made way, allowing them to reach the large tent quickly. Inside, the medicinal scent was strong, and a meager old man dressed in simple gray robes attended to patients. He exuded an aura of wisdom and insight, as if capable of reading hearts. Flanking him were a young man and a young woman, the former handsome and well-kept, seemingly tired yet scholarly, the latter elegant and serene, with eyes that sparkled like stars. Xu Qing noticed their ethereal presence, feeling a pang of envy for their apparent refinement and health. Grandmaster Bai, the elderly doctor, directed them to lay Captain Lei down carefully. Under his gaze, Xu Qing felt a faint nervousness, reminiscent of his days under strict supervision in the slums. Captain Lei gradually regained consciousness, and upon seeing the doctor, instinctively rose to his feet. However, the doctor commanded him to lie down properly, and with Cross's assistance, Captain Lei complied and bowed respectfully. Grandmaster Bai examined Captain Lei carefully, noting the recent injuries and the suppressed anomalous substances. He observed the strain on Captain Lei's mind and heart meridian caused by recent emotional fluctuations. Yet, his primary concern was an internal injury sustained years prior, likely due to someone crippling his foundation in early years. Despite this, Captain Lei had rebuilt his cultivation from scratch, reaching an impressive level, though the combination of old and new injuries had left him overexerted. The doctor provided medication but warned that continued cultivation breathing techniques could trigger relapse and even death. Cross and Luan Tooth listened in stunned silence, grasping the gravity of the situation. When they inquired about alternatives, Grandmaster Bai mentioned the legendary heavenfate flower, a rare treasure capable of restoring cultivation for another generation, rumored to exist near the Forbidden Zone. Captain Lei remained calm throughout the explanation, offering reassurance that the matter was not critical. He graciously received the medication and dismissed Xu Qing and the others, who departed respectfully, carrying the precious remedies. Yet, Xu Qing could not shake the feeling of scrutiny from Grandmaster Bai's gaze, sensing a weight of silent evaluation upon him. Once back at Captain Lei's residence, Cross and Luan Tooth lingered, unsure of what to say. But Captain Lei sent them away with a simple wave. At last, he retrieved his tobacco and pipe. Taking a deep, relaxing draw, exhaling slowly, he smiled at Xu Qing, remarking on the comfort of smoking after the tense experience in the Forbidden Zone. Finally, he turned to Xu Qing, seemingly in a lighter mood, and said, "What do you feel like eating today? I will make a meal for you. Accompany me for a drink." Captain Lei didn't let Xu Qing speak, as though he didn't wish to listen. Hence, Xu Qing looked at him quietly and nodded his head after a long while. "I want to eat snake." Within the scavengers' campsite, apart from the necessities for survival, meat was the next thing they had in abundance. This was largely due to the campsite's proximity to the Forbidden Zone. Every day, some scavengers would venture into the dangerous area to hunt, and a few stalls had been set up to sell edible meat. The abundance of meat made the campsite feel more alive, despite the harsh environment. Captain Lei's wrinkled face broke into a restrained laugh when Xu Qing expressed his desire to eat snake meat. He remembered the reason behind Xu Qing's choice. The boy clearly had committed a long-past conversation to memory, and it brought a small, warm amusement to Captain Lei's heart. Before Xu Qing could head out to buy the snake himself, Captain Lei stood up and stopped him. "Those people in the campsite are all deceitful," he said firmly. "You do not yet know enough about the mutated beasts from the Forbidden Zone. It will be easy for someone to trick you, and you might end up being coerced into paying more than you should. It is better that I go instead." Xu Qing, subconsciously touching the iron stick at his side, replied with calm certainty, "They will not." Captain Lei glanced at the stick and could not help but laugh quietly. Without saying another word, he strode out into the chilling wind, leaving Xu Qing alone to finish his preparations. Xu Qing moved into the side room, methodically washing pans and bowls. He arranged the table meticulously and set up 3 sets of bowls and chopsticks. He paused when placing the third set, recalling Captain Lei's words from long ago. A set prepared for someone who would never come. Silently, Xu Qing placed it beside Captain Lei's set and mirrored it with a chair, acknowledging the absence in quiet thought. Outside, dusk had settled, and a cold breeze carried indistinct snowflakes through the air, even as the eastern part of the Nanwang continent began to warm at the end of March. Winter had not completely let go. Snow swirled through the air, falling from the overcast sky, dancing down to earth before melting into the mud below. Xu Qing felt the chill seep into him despite his cultivation training, a memory of years of cold lingering deep within him. Suddenly, an unsteady silhouette emerged from the blizzard, shielding against the cold wind. The figure opened the door to the courtyard with a laugh that cut through the gusts. "Kid, you are in for a treat today. Look what I managed to buy," said Captain Lei, carrying a red flower snake in his hands. "This is premium quality. I will show off my skills for you shortly." Xu Qing watched as Captain Lei entered the side room, noting the neat arrangement of bowls, chopsticks, and shares. Captain Lei's face broke into a broad smile, his eyes lingering on Xu Qing as he asked, "Do you want to learn how to cook a snake?" Xu Qing's eyes lit up. "I do," he replied eagerly, his curiosity and thirst for knowledge shining through. Captain Lei chuckled and began his demonstration. He explained the logic of preparing the snake, teaching Xu Qing that the tail should be removed due to excretion, and the venom in the head neutralized to enhance the meat's flavor. Xu Qing observed closely as Captain Lei cleaned the snake, skinned it, removed the organs, and cut it into pieces. "Kid, whether there will be an aftertaste depends on the soup," Captain Lei explained, as he began to slow boil a clay pot of water, adding various medicinal ingredients and the treated snake head. The aroma quickly filled the room, and Xu Qing felt his stomach growl. Captain Lei then retrieved a wok and stir-fried the snake meat at high heat. The sizzling sound of oil and the fragrance that filled the air seemed to push back the cold from outside, making the small room feel warm and inviting. Soon, the stir-fried meat was added to the clay pot, and Captain Lei covered it. Turning to Xu Qing, "Have you learned it?" he asked. Xu Qing nodded vigorously, impressed by the simplicity and logic of the process. Captain Lei then returned with 2 flasks of alcohol, handing one to Xu Qing while he drank from the other. "There is no shortage of meat here, but this alcohol is rare," he said, eyes sparkling with enjoyment. Xu Qing, having never tasted alcohol before, hesitated, but he sipped it tentatively. The first taste filled his mouth with sharp spiciness, and heat surged down his throat and through his body. He exhaled sharply, tasting the strong burn of alcohol, and admitted, "It is not pleasant." Captain Lei laughed heartily. "You are still too young to appreciate alcohol. When you are older, you will enjoy it." Undeterred, Xu Qing took another sip, gradually becoming accustomed to the strange taste. The snake meat was ready shortly after, and Captain Lei served it in the clay pot. The aroma was irresistible, and Xu Qing, despite his attempts at polite eating, wolfed down the food hungrily. The warmth of the meal, combined with the alcohol, filled the room with a cozy atmosphere. Captain Lei watched Xu Qing struggle with the chopsticks and muttered to himself, a hint of gentleness in his eyes. After all, he is still a child. It is a pity he has lived in such a cruel world. As the blizzard outside swept through the cracks of the residence, Xu Qing curled his body slightly to resist the cold. A small gesture Captain Lei noticed but did not comment on. Later, Xu Qing mimicked Captain Lei's technique with the alcohol. Watching the man he had known through hardship, concern stirred in Xu Qing, and he asked softly about Captain Lei's injuries. Captain Lei waved off the concern with a smile. "No matter, I have lived with them for so many years. I will not die easily." They continued their meal until the alcohol flask was empty. Captain Lei, slightly hazy-eyed, returned to his room. Xu Qing quietly tidied the table, cleaned the pots and bowls, and finally returned to his own room. Sitting on the bed plank, he reflected on the day and retrieved the leather bag he had taken from the Bloodshadow captain in the Forbidden Zone. Inside were no alchemy pills, but several spirit coins and miscellaneous items. Among them was a black glove with a metallic texture that proved highly protective. He tested it with a few punches before setting it aside and meditating. Starting his breathing technique. The night passed in quiet reflection. By dawn, the snow continued to fall. Though the warmth was returning, Xu Qing stepped outside, leaving fresh tracks in the snow. Holding his clothes tight around him, remembering Captain Lei's needs, he decided to purchase white pills. Passing Grandmaster Bai's tent, he paused briefly, hearing the young man and woman studying inside. A pang of envy passed over him, but he continued toward the general store. Outside, a small girl diligently cleared the snow. Her thin garments did little to protect her, and her tiny hands were red from the cold, vapor rising with each breath. Despite her fatigue, she worked earnestly. Xu Qing noticed the scar on her face, more prominent under the morning sun. The girl saw Xu Qing approaching and smiled brightly. "Morning," she greeted. Xu Qing, unused to such warmth, nodded in return. Inside the store, she helped him select a leather bag containing white pills, explaining apologetically that only 5 could be sold each day. Xu Qing inspected them, noticing their higher quality, and thanked the girl. She replied modestly, claiming that she owed him her life for his previous help. Before leaving, she whispered a warning about recent disappearances among young people at the campsite, suggesting human malice rather than natural dangers. Xu Qing nodded, absorbing the concern in her eyes, and retreated a few steps before turning away. He looked back once more, watching the girl continue her work, the scar on her face under the sunlight. Captain Lei's earlier words came to mind about a stone in the Forbidden Zone that could remove scars. Xu Qing's resolve hardened quietly. "If there's a chance, I'll go find one for her," Xu Qing muttered in his heart, then turned and left. The young man walked away, leaving a trail of tracks in the snow. The wind and snow behind him grew even heavier. Amidst the wind and snow, Xu Qing returned to the courtyard. However, before he could even enter, he already heard the joyous laughter of Captain Lei from outside. The laughter was immediately followed by the barking of dogs. Pushing the gate aside, Xu Qing was met with more than 10 wild dogs sprawled across the courtyard. They stared at him with cold, piercing eyes, yet Xu Qing did not display any hostility in return. His gaze was calm, simple, and unthreatening. Surprisingly, the fur on the backs of the wild dogs bristled, and slowly, they retreated, giving him a path to the courtyard. From inside the house, a soft cry of surprise rang out. Cross and Luan Tooth stepped out, looking between Xu Qing and the dozens of dogs. Cross cracked a small, knowing smile. "Kid," he said, "the dogs are saying that there is a strong baleful air surrounding you." Luan Tooth crouched down to gently caress the head of a nearby dog and smiled warmly. "They respect your strength," she added, her voice calm and playful. Xu Qing's attention then turned to Captain Lei, who emerged from the residence, wearing a thick leather coat and holding a tobacco pipe. He stepped out deliberately and gestured toward Luan Tooth, speaking with a mixture of exasperation and amusement. "Luan Tooth believes I am injured," Captain Lei said, "so she insisted on sending these dogs to guard the house and protect the yard." It was a simple explanation, yet Xu Qing understood the meaning beneath it. Captain Lei had not mentioned the incident involving him, just as Xu Qing had refrained from mentioning the singing voice. Both had silently agreed to let the other decide how much to reveal. Xu Qing nodded and retrieved the leather bag containing white pills. Passing it to Captain Lei, the older man took it, glanced at its contents, and laughed lightly. "All right, I do need these, but do not buy them for me anymore," Captain Lei said. "I have plenty saved up, more than enough to sell." "Cross," he continued, turning to his companion, "the kid is back. Whatever you have to say, you may speak now." Cross's smile faded, replaced by a solemn expression. He spoke slowly, deliberately. "I have come here today for 2 matters. The first concerns Captain Lei's medicine." Cross continued, "Luan Tooth and I purchased about a month's supply. When it is used up, we will buy more as needed." He produced a leather bag from his side and placed it to the ground. Cross then explained the second matter. With the elimination of the Bloodshadow team, even though other scavengers harvested 7 leaf grass, none collected as much as our team. Luan Tooth and I handed it over to the camp leader yesterday and received the reward. However, following the camp leader's usual deductions, we did not receive 3 clear dust pills. Only one was given. Cross looked to Luan Tooth for confirmation. Luan Tooth produced 4 leather bags and set them down, then retrieved a wooden box. Opening it, she revealed a green alchemy pill the size of a pigeon's egg. Its medicinal aroma spread through the courtyard, richer and stronger than the white pills they usually received. Barbaric Ghost had no relatives, so I have distributed his share among us, she explained. These 4 leather bags contain our spirit coin portions. And as for the clear dust pill, Cross looked to Captain Lei, awaiting his decision. Give it to the kid, Captain Lei said quietly. In that moment, his commanding presence, the aura of the leader of the Thunder Team, returned. Cross nodded solemnly, while Luan Tooth paused, deep in thought. The answer to what had occurred in the jungle was unspoken but clear. Barbaric Ghost's legacy rightfully belonged to them. And they recognized Xu Qing as a part of that family. Xu Qing quietly accepted the leather bag, giving a careful glance to Captain Lei regarding the clear dust pill. The sternness in Captain Lei's eyes conveyed the significance of this gift. And Xu Qing kept it silently. The 4 conversed for a while. Xu Qing remained reserved, listening carefully from the side, though Cross and Luan Tooth occasionally sought his opinion. Time passed quietly but steadily, and before long, noon arrived. With the temporary cessation of wind and snow, Cross and Luan Tooth prepared to leave. Before departing, Cross leaned toward Xu Qing and whispered, "Kid, Luan Tooth and I have accepted a mission and must leave for a time. During this period, the leader is in your care." From his belt, he produced a small, sharp dagger and handed it to Xu Qing. "Your old dagger is rusted. Use this instead," he explained. Luan Tooth passed him a whistle. "Although you are strong in combat, you will still need eyes and helpers. This whistle can control the wild dogs here. If there is a need, blow it. They understand what to do." After a few words of urging, the 2 cupped their fists and departed. Xu Qing watched their figures until they disappeared from sight. He then looked toward Captain Lei's room. After a moment of hesitation, he walked through the dogs, who now parted silently for him, and entered the residence. He closed his eyes and sat cross-legged in meditation, centering himself amidst the cold gusts that penetrated every corner of the tents and houses. The wind howled outside, mixing falling snow with what had accumulated on the ground, sending it skittering across the courtyard. Inside, Captain Lei rested, accustomed to the chill, yet, in his mind, the image of Xu Qing curled against the cold surface. After a moment of silent reflection, he lifted his leather hat and left the residence. However, in his mind, the image of Xu Qing curling up in the cold surfaced. As such, he turned his head in the direction of Xu Qing's room, and after a moment of silence, he took his leather hat and left the residence. Time flew by and it was 3 days in a blink of an eye. In those 3 days, it was like the blizzard was using up its last remaining power and scattered its leftover chill, causing snow to fall ceaselessly. The snow on the ground hadn't had time to melt before it accumulated a thick layer. Despite the relentless cold, survival remained the priority for the scavengers. The campsite gradually grew busier, with some seeking treatments for lingering illnesses while others prepared to venture into the forbidden zone. Life pressed on, indifferent to the snow piling up around them. Meanwhile, the absence of the Blood Shadow team became a topic of discussion among the scavengers. Rumors swirled through the camp, claiming that the Blood Shadow team had been entirely wiped out in the Forbidden Zone. Initially, few believed such an unlikely tale. After all, the Blood Shadow captain was one of the most formidable figures in the campsite. Having traversed the Forbidden Zone countless times, the thought of the entire team perishing seemed implausible. Yet, as days passed and no signs of the Blood Shadow team appeared, more and more scavengers began to accept the possibility. They recalled Captain Lei's return from the Forbidden Zone in an unconscious state, and Barbaric Ghost's mysterious disappearance. Bit by bit, the pieces seemed to fit together, forming an unspoken conclusion: the Blood Shadow team was gone. Without Blood Shadow, the Thunder team had ascended as the strongest force within the campsite. Xu Qing noticed this in the gazes of the other scavengers. Look upon the Thunder team carried respect. though not necessarily directed at him personally. He did not mind. His focus remained on understanding Captain Lei's mysterious schedule. The older man often left early and returned late, busy with unknown matters. Yet Xu Qing respected his independence and preferred not to interfere. Most of his days passed quietly in the residence, cultivating diligently. With steady effort, his base improved gradually, his strength and speed increasing noticeably. He spent much time examining his shadow, noting no changes apart from the absorption of anomalous substances. Interestingly, the mutation point on his arm had vanished entirely, and his body's purity seemed to accelerate his cultivation progress. 2 days later, in the afternoon, Xu Qing sat cross-legged, preparing to stabilize his cultivation from the past few days before attempting a breakthrough to the 4th level of Mountains and Seas art. His concentration was interrupted, however, by the barking of stray dogs and a knock on the bamboo gate. He stepped outside, noting that Captain Lei had not returned. On the other side of the gate stood a familiar scavenger. Looking hesitant, Xu Qing recognized him as one of the 7 or 8 people he had previously rescued before his return from the Forbidden Zone. The scavenger hurried forward, clasping his hands. "Brother Kid, it's me. I'm Boneblade," he said, voice tinged with anxiety. Xu Qing's expression remained neutral. "What's the matter?" he asked flatly. Boneblade hesitated, then gritted his teeth. "Brother Kid, I wish to use 5 white pills in exchange for your insurance." He tossed a leather bag toward Xu Qing. Xu Qing did not catch it, letting the bag fall to the ground. The dogs sniffed at it cautiously but did not approach. Seeing Xu Qing's suspicion, Boneblade hurriedly explained. His plan was simple. If he did not return from the Forbidden Zone within 3 days, Xu Qing would venture to the venomous dragon swamp area to rescue him, just as he had done before. "I am not worried about the mutated beasts," Boneblade explained. "It is my fate if I die from them. My concern is the labyrinth fog. I cannot face it alone." Xu Qing raised an eyebrow at the unusual request. "And if there is no fog? Or if you return early?" he asked. "You need not return the alchemy pills. I am only buying peace of mind," Boneblade replied earnestly. He bowed low, his plea sincere. Xu Qing examined the leather pouch with his foot, finding 5 white pills inside. Though he did not need them, they were a recognized currency at the campsite. After a moment of thought, he agreed. Boneblade exhaled in relief, bowed again, and left. Despite agreeing, Xu Qing remained cautious. He would assess the situation when the time came. If the fog did not rise, there would be no need to act. If Boneblade could truly predict the fog, it was not a trick at all. With that in mind, Xu Qing returned to his residence and resumed his meditation. The next morning, after completing his cultivation, Xu Qing stepped outside to hear the dogs barking. He froze as he saw a curious sight. Captain Lei was packing large and small parcels onto the backs of the stray dogs, causing some to pant and nearly collapse from the weight. "You done cultivating? Let's go. I'm bringing you somewhere," Captain Lei said, wiping sweat from his brow with a smile. He patted the dogs, opened the bamboo gate, and gestured for Xu Qing to follow. Xu Qing, confused but obedient, trailed after Captain Lei. The dogs followed dutifully. Together, they strode from the center ring region to the inner ring region, passing solid brick houses and shops, until they arrived at a huge courtyard with 4 independent brick houses, each sturdier and more spacious than any residence Xu Qing had seen before. Captain Lei turned to him with a smile. "This will be our new home from now on," he said. Xu Qing was stunned. "New home?" he asked, the word evoking a strange, unfamiliar warmth. "I've worked half my life and saved a lot," Captain Lei explained, "and since my body is giving way, I might as well move into a bigger house and enjoy life." He laughed and began unloading the dog's burdens. Xu Qing slowly entered, taking in the sturdy brick floors and houses, almost in a trance. Even when Captain Lei asked him to help, he found it hard to adjust to this unfamiliar sense of security. Half a day passed in bustling activity. As night fell, the blizzard still raged outside, but inside the brick house, Xu Qing and Captain Lei sat beside a stove. Warmth radiated through the room, filling it entirely. There were no cracks in the walls, and the icy wind could not penetrate. Xu Qing felt his body relax completely for the first time in days. "Not cold anymore, right?" Captain Lei asked, smiling. Not cold anymore," Xu Qing replied, feeling a strange flutter in his chest under the glow of the stove. After some time, Captain Lei returned to his room. Xu Qing remained by the stove, murmuring softly to himself. "Home?" In the side room, Captain Lei's remnants of a smile faded. His face turned slightly red. He covered his mouth and coughed a few times. After a while, he swallowed the fishy taste down his throat. With a soft sigh, he stood beside the window and lifted his head as he looked toward the forbidden zone. Memories surfaced in his gaze as he mumbled, "I really want to go there and take a look again." That very night, Xu Qing had a dream. This was the first time in over 6 years that he stayed in such a luxurious house and didn't feel the chill from outside. At the same time, it was also a rare night where he had dreams. In the dream, the world was different. It was gentle, safe, and familiar. A place far removed from the harsh reality he had endured. The sky was whole, unmarred by the fragmented face of a god. His parents stood beside him, alive and smiling, and there was an elder brother. Someone who would walk alongside him in daily life. He was living without fear or worry, attending school with friends, playing, laughing, and returning home to the warmth of a full house and a piping hot meal. Sleep at night was calm, undisturbed by hunger or danger. Yet, there was an oddity. All the people in the dream were slightly blurry, shrouded in a layer of mist that obscured their features. Xu Qing longed to see them clearly, to reach out and touch them. But every attempt was thwarted by the hazy veil. The dream lingered until morning, when he slowly awoke, staring at the ceiling and taking a moment to fully emerge from the vivid illusion. He looked around the grayish-black brick room he now called home. It was simple yet comfortable. A table, chairs, and a bed were arranged neatly, and a small bathroom radiated residual warmth from the stove. On the floor, a straw mat lay patiently, while an empty bookshelf stood waiting to be filled. This modest arrangement, when compared to his past hardships, felt like luxury to Xu Qing. Rising quietly, Xu Qing walked to the bathroom and ran water over his dirt-stained hands. Watching as they gradually returned to their natural color, he lifted them, glanced at his reflection in the mirror, and noted the familiar, dirt-smudged face framed by messy black hair, yet with eyes that shone clear and alert. After a moment of contemplation, he wiped his hands on himself, returning them to their dirty state as if to remind himself of reality. Xu Qing turned to the window and looked out. Outside, the wind and snow had finally stopped. Sunlight streamed across the landscape, melting the final remnants of winter. Snow clung to the trees only lightly now, revealing green buds that signaled the arrival of spring. A faint determination gleamed in Xu Qing's eyes as he stepped out of his room, glancing at Captain Lei's residence and acknowledging the wild dogs in the courtyard. They barely lifted their heads, greeting him with a subtle sweep of their tails. He opened the courtyard gate and walked purposefully toward the tent where the doctor of the carriages was stationed. The early morning was quiet, with few scavengers moving about the campsite. As Xu Qing approached, the guards swept their gaze over him, scrutinizing his presence. From within the tent, he could hear the sound of studying, voices filled with effort and focus. He paused, listening intently. Inside the tent, students were being tested by Grandmaster Bai. One young girl hesitated as she recited details about the goltern grass, a rare medicinal herb known for its therapeutic properties. She described its habitats, its classifications, and how it could be paired with other ingredients to create powerful potions, her voice trembling slightly under Bai's scrutiny. Nearby, a young boy faltered mid-sentence, unable to recall the details of whiteback root. Grandmaster Bai's strict voice instructed him to copy the grasswood scripture 10 times that night, leaving the boy despondent. Xu Qing absorbed every word, committing the knowledge to memory. Each sentence, every description of herbs and their applications, was valuable to him, as he thirsted for understanding. He listened so intently that hours passed unnoticed. The lesson extended well beyond its usual duration. continuing until the sun climbed high in the sky and scavengers queued for medical treatment outside. Then, finally, Grandmaster Bai's hoarse voice addressed him. "The youth outside, you may enter," Bai said. Xu Qing's body tensed with nervous anticipation. He took a deep breath, stepped forward, and pushed aside the tent flap. Entering cautiously, he felt slightly guilty for eavesdropping but was determined to gain knowledge. Grandmaster Bai observed him calmly and asked, "What is the matter?" The young girl beside Bai looked at Xu Qing curiously. She remembered the days prior when Xu Qing had brought an elderly man to the camp for treatment. Xu Qing bowed deeply in respect to Grandmaster Bai, emulating the courtesy he had learned from Captain Lei. After a brief hesitation, he asked about the heavenfate flower. He placed 5 white pills on the table before Bai, along with 10 spirit coins, as an appropriate offering for the lesson he had overheard. Grandmaster Bai's eyes lingered on Xu Qing. Then he gestured to the girl, Yu Ting, instructing her to answer. She straightened, exuding confidence as she explained the rare heavenfate flower, also known as the life extension blaze or divine spirit grass. It was a mutated variant of the compound wood, with 73 variants in total, only the first of which could be used medicinally. It grew exclusively in forbidden zones, without predictable locations, and was guarded by powerful mutated beasts. She described its miraculous effects: the ability to regenerate broken limbs, restore life force, and cure nearly all injuries except those of the soul. Yu Ting showed Xu Qing a detailed illustration, including jagged edges on the herb and a silk thread-like symbol embedded in its center. Xu Qing memorized every aspect carefully, then bowed deeply in gratitude before preparing to leave. Before departing, Grandmaster Bai's calm voice cautioned him. This herb can only be acquired by luck and not actively sought after. There are always powerful mutated beasts around it. You should know your limits. With these words in mind, Xu Qing left the tent and moved quickly through the campsite, returning to his residence. There, he took a piece of bamboo and carefully recorded the description, properties, and illustration of the heavenfate flower, as well as the lesson he had overheard from that day. The bamboo was soon filled with densely etched words, a treasure of knowledge that Xu Qing cherished deeply. He reflected aloud, how good would it be if I could continue to listen? Before resuming his cultivation with renewed focus. Later that night, when Captain Lei returned, Xu Qing expressed his desire to venture into the forbidden zone. Captain Lei hesitated but eventually nodded, recounting his experiences in great detail. Much like a concerned elder sharing wisdom with a young descendant, he continued until dawn, after which he handed Xu Qing a leather sack filled with various medical powders left by Luan Tooth, explaining their specific uses. At first light, Xu Qing bid farewell to the campsite and traveled swiftly through the wilderness. Arriving at the forbidden zone's boundary, as he stepped past the threshold, the warmth of the sunlight seemed to vanish, replaced by a sinister chill that pricked at his senses. Xu Qing's eyes narrowed with vigilance, and he shifted into a fleeting shadow, moving silently into the dense jungle. It was his second time entering the forbidden zone, and his familiarity now brought both confidence and heightened caution. He observed the flowers and herbs carefully, recalling past experiences, and soon reached the site where he had previously found silt. Following Luan Tooth's method, he smeared the silt onto his body, then continued deeper into the jungle. Time passed, and Xu Qing encountered neither fog nor aggressive mutated beasts. He found the area where the black-scaled wolf had once been. Noting that the majority of the wolf corpses had decayed naturally, without evidence of predation, relieved, he selected a nearby hiding spot and spent the night, preparing for further exploration the following day. Night fell, shrouding the jungle in darkness. Xu Qing settled into a crack in a tree, eyes trained on the 7-leaf grass canyon. Beyond it, a group of temples lay quietly. He reflected on his dual objectives: to locate the elusive heavenfate flower and to assist the young girl in finding a stone capable of removing scars. This time around, other than wanting to find the heavenfate flower in the forbidden zone, he had another thought. He also wanted to help the little girl find a stone that could remove scars. Let's go and take a look, Xu Qing mumbled. In this episode, we saw Xu Qing returning to the courtyard, facing the challenge of wild dogs, and being recognized for his strength and contributions. We witnessed his quiet diligence as he cultivated his abilities, the respect he earned from the scavengers, and the growing responsibilities he took on while Captain Lei and his companions were away. Xu Qing also began exploring his curiosity and thirst for knowledge, secretly listening to lessons about rare medicinal herbs and recording everything carefully to expand his understanding. By the end, he bravely ventured into the Forbidden Zone again, not only seeking the elusive heavenfate flower but also aiming to help the young girl find a special stone to remove scars, showing his growing determination and sense of purpose. What happens next? Stay tuned for the next episode of Outside of Time. If you enjoyed this episode or found it interesting, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to receive notifications about the latest episodes following Xu Qing's journey. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.